Hello, my name is Hellfire695, and I'm finally doing part 2 of MKultra. I uploaded part 1 last week, and this week I want to talk more about the actual contents of Project MKultra. You see, because this is a very extensive project into mind control. 149 different sub-projects involved, as categorized by the Church Committee, that was led by Ted Kennedy in 1975. That was determined from financial records that were long lost to the CIA, and that's why they escaped burning in 1973 by when Richard Helms left. Richard Helms was the director of the CIA, and he was the guy who was all over this thing. The uninformed consent, the informed consent, the drugs used, you name it, he had to do with it. And the other big player in this would have been a guy by the name of Ewan Cameron, who led quite a good number of experiments at McGill University here in Canada. See, he was the creator of the concept of psychic driving, which he initially intended to use to cure various schizophrenic patients. However, I guess the CIA picked up a copy of his book and became very, very interested in his work. So, from 1957 to 1964, they paid him $70,000 extra on top of what he was already making working at the Allen Institute there, to carry out uninformed consent experiments on his patients. Okay, now, before you guys say, oh, well, $70,000 doesn't sound like a whole lot of money when it's spread out over 70 years, you had to keep into mind when this was happening. You know, that's back when money was worth something. That works out to be about, I don't know, off the top of my head, I'd say a nice couple of, well, let me think here. Yeah, okay, no, that'd probably work out to be about, what's 5 times 7? 5 times 7, oh, I should know this. 35. That's $350,000 by today's standards. Now that's a chunk of change. However, what this psychic driving method involved was doing things such as putting subjects into a drug-induced coma for weeks at a time, in fact up to 3 months at one case, while playing 2 tape loops of noise or simple repetitive statements. And these tape loops would be placed underneath their pillows. And you see, these experiments were typically, this is what makes it ironic, because the experiments that Ewan Cameron typically did, people that he typically did these experiments on, were people that come in there for things such as anxiety or postpartum depression. So in short, what would happen is that these people would go in there for something, as mental illnesses goes, relatively minor, such as an anxiety problem or also a depression. He would write them up as something much, much worse, so he could keep them in there for a long time. Then he would use these experiments to make them really screwed up so nobody would ask any questions. Pretty clever if you ask me. And then he would basically, by the time these people left, the people that had come in there for depression would come out so screwed up they couldn't remember who their parents were, or who their kids were, or they'd forget to talk. How to talk, or they forget their own names in some cases. That was the case of the woman I seen. I can't remember her name at the moment. I'll have to see if I can dig up the link to it. It was a History Channel documentary onto MKultra. And William Sargent, the other guy I'd like to mention, his work inspired and paralleled Ewan Cameron, and he worked at the St. Thomas Hospital in London doing similar stuff, uninformed consent, and just basically really screwing people up. But my personal favorite case was done by the director of the technical department. One sec, I'll find his name here. You see, he was invited to a banquet. Yeah, he was invited to this big banquet among all these senior army personnel. Okay? And one of these guys there was a senior army chemist named Frank Olson. And this is back when they were doing the, I'm going to give you a little foreground for this, and that is, they also tried experimenting with LSD as a truth drug to see if they could manipulate the trips. And they started off doing informed consent, using informed consent and everything like that on college students. 1953, a college student come in, he could take a hit of LSD and they pay him $25. Well, $25, that's like $100 now. You get to have a trip while you're at it. So a lot of college students took advantage of that. And also, for informed consent, they did something among the prison system, and they said to drug-addicted criminals, hey, we'll give you some, if you let us give you LSD, we'll give you whatever drug you want. Which is a very tempting offer to some guy who's sitting there going like, I need heroin, rocking back and forth in the back of his cell. Which is, that's not so screwed up. Where it gets real fucked up is the CIA guy said, you know what, the fuck with informed consent. We want to test it under field conditions. We want to try it on people who don't know they're being given it. So what they did is they called up one of their underworld contacts, his name escapes me at the moment, and they got him to recruit some hookers for them. Okay? And what these CIA agents would do is they would install a two-way mirror in whatever prostitute's apartment. And she was also working for them, so they'd be paying her too. Okay? And they'd have two guys sitting behind a mirror that no one else could see behind, but they could see through, two-way mirror, sitting there with a notepad, recording everything. Bet you some of them got a real kick out of that one. I just realized how funny that is. Two CIA agents who probably haven't been laid in years, sitting behind a two-way mirror in a hooker's apartment. But anyway, what they did here is they would record everything. And the hooker would bring back her customers back to the apartment, and she would offer them a cocktail before they fucked. Okay? And the cocktail would be spiked with LSD. That's the perfect way to test its effect. Because, who the hell's going to run out to the media and say, a hooker drugged me with LSD! A hooker did it! Because that's a very compromising position. Anyway, they would record all the effects and whatnot. And then the director of technical services was at this big old army banquet with Frank Olson, as I said before, one of the biggest, a very senior chemist in the army who done some work for this stuff on the barbiturates and whatnot that they were trying out as truth drugs as well, which they also used a lot in Ewan Cameron's experiments too. Well, this moron for a technical director had the bright idea, let's spike Frank Olson's after-dinner liqueur with LSD. Well, here's how it ended. Frank Olson took a terrible trip and threw himself out of a window, out of a skyscraper. Instantly dead. And on top of that, the poor man's family never found out what happened until 1975. And there's a couple of there's more interesting points I'd like to get into, but that's going to be in part 3, such as MK search, and there's one other thing I'd like to use to note, though. And that is in 1973, when Richard Helm was leaving the CIA, he had everything he could find on this project burnt, to make it nearly impossible to investigate as well. All known information about the number of projects and stuff comes from obscure financial records. Anyway, I don't have much time left, so name's Hellfire695, and peace the fuck out.